Suzanne F. Stevens, Chief Edge Optimizer for the Ignite Excellence Group of Initiatives. One of our key initiatives is the Ignite Excellence Foundation, where we invest, inspire, and develop future leaders in emerging countries. With that spirit, we produce Wisdom Exchange TV, where we interview pioneers, trailblazers, leaders of many in business, philanthropy, education, as well as politics. Today we're in Joburg, or Johannesburg. I've been here a while, so I can get away with Joburg, South Africa, with our leading lady, Jane Trembath, who is an airline captain and inspirational speaker. Jane has been flying since 1982. She is one of the first lady pilots into a somewhat skeptical male environment in South Africa. She had many proud moments with females first in South Africa aviation, but also made some spectacular mistakes, which she doesn't mind admitting, in navigating the minefield of being a woman in a man's world. Absolute pleasure to meet you finally, because I've been trying to interview you for a year, and finally made it back to Johannesburg to do that. So absolute pleasure to meet you, Jane.
Lovely too.
You know, I'm always fascinated when somebody has this vision or a dream to do something so different and unique and pioneering, like in your case. Do you remember the first time that you thought, I want to be a pilot?
Yes, very clearly. In fact, because I was 16 years old and I'd always, in fact, dreamt of doing other things like being a fashion designer, girly stuff. And I went in a light aircraft for the first time when we went on a family holiday, and it was just so exciting. It just struck me. I just got to be a pilot. So it just changed my whole desire of what I was going to do in an instance.
So you're 16 years old, and did you start communicating to people, I'm going to be a pilot?
Yes, I did. I communicated to my parents, who were, in any case, not very conventional people, and they never ever said to me, there's nothing that you can't do because you're a woman. They were even skeptical themselves, so they said, well, we'll see, but I kept on at them. After a few months, they decided, yes, that I can go ahead with it, and as soon as I left school, then I started flying lessons.
Okay. Now, did any other people kind of think, okay, well, you know, this is a 16-year-old, it's going to change, or she's not going to be able to do it, or the environment isn't going to allow her to do it?
No, I must say that the girls at school were particularly skeptical, and my teachers as well. They all thought it was a great joke. And nowadays, when they see me on aircraft, I must tell you that their attitude has changed.
How many years later? Now, how did you respond at that time? Do you recall, I mean, I know we're going back a little bit, but when people were skeptical about this vision that you had, do you recall what you said?
I just remained determined to do it. I didn't worry about what they thought.
Now, you talk a lot about challenges and being in a woman in a man's world. What are some of the biggest challenges you encountered in your career?
To start off with, I think it was not quite knowing how to conduct myself as a woman, because you've got no one to guide you. You've got nobody who's come ahead of you who can say, okay, this is how you must be. You must act like a man, or you must be girly in this situation. You've got nobody to lead you. And also, with going into that environment, it's got its own set of protocols, and you don't really know how to conduct yourself with these men who've all come from the Air Force. That is one of the biggest challenges I had at first, was trying to just find my place and trying to prove myself, which was, in any case, not the right thing to do. When you try too hard to prove yourself, then you make mistakes. That was one of the challenges that really reared up, and I had to learn how to overcome that by finding out who I was.
What are some of the biggest challenges you've encountered pursuing a career as a pilot and a captain?
Well, let's start at the beginning. When I joined the airline, then I had challenges of not understanding the protocols. There were a lot of unwritten rules that came from the old guys in the Air Force, and things that you and I would probably find perfectly normal, and here I was opening my mouth to change feet. For example, I had one day, I went on a trip where we had to position somewhere the day before, but the captain didn't. He came the next day. I would have loved to have spent an extra night at home. And I said to him in front of the rest of the crew, I said, oh, Captain, how did you manage to get it right to come down the next day? As a genuine question, and afterwards the crew member said, oh, you shouldn't have asked that. So it was just innocent things. was putting my foot in it. And then I found I also had people making snide remarks, prejudice, which I was never expecting, and I didn't know how to deal with that either. I had people picking up the PA system on the aircraft and making snide remarks about me to the passengers, which also, you get so dumbstruck, you just don't know how to deal with it at the time. I had other things. Sexual harassment is something which we can't ignore it. It doesn't happen to me as much anymore being a captain, because sexual harassment, I thought maybe it was just because I was getting older, you understand, but it's not really. It's more because it's an abuse of power, and that people tend to do it to junior people. So that was something which I had to deal with as well.
Now, those are some of the three really, really good examples. Can you help us understand how you overcame each one of those? So the first one, which you said, is just innocently asking questions out of curiosity. Did you just stop asking questions, or what did you do to deal with that?
No, I just carried on putting my foot in it over the years. And eventually I did learn by default what I shouldn't have been doing, but I had a number of uncomfortable experiences along the way, and eventually, where I'd kind of learned by default, and you mentioned earlier in my bio that I did run our mentorship program for a while, and that was actually specifically designed to help people ease their way into the airline and understand the airline, the culture, because every different company has got a culture, and if someone had just told me beforehand, you've got to tune yourself, and that is why I was so keen on doing it, just so that I could help other people that didn't have to go through these experiences that I had.
I'm really intrigued and fascinated, but not surprised, that on the PA system to passengers, that someone would actually say something derogatory about you as a pilot. In that moment, how did you deal with that?
Well, I can tell you, I dealt with it exactly the wrong way. I was so dumbfounded that I said nothing. And one particular instance where the captain realized that he really made a boo-boo, and then he tried another thing, which I've seen happens a lot to women in these men's worlds. When some captain now realizes he's messed up and he wants to prevent anything further from happening, and he launches a preemptive strike. And I was trying to be nice to him, thinking he's been so horrible to me. If I'm nice to him, then maybe he'll be nice in return. I think that's a common mistake that women make. But he actually went after the flight and told people, she'd done this and that, which was all completely false. And it could have damaged my career just because this man had made a mistake. And nowadays I would know better how to deal with it, where I'd speak up. I just love talking about powerful communication, because women have to learn that to be able to know how to speak up. We don't talk back because we don't know how to do so properly. And it's something which I've really made my business to learn over the last several years, assertion and how to communicate powerfully in such a way that you can get your point across but not upset anybody.
And so let's go there. So we've gone back to the situation. What would you do if the pilot said something derogatory now, knowing what you know today?
Well, I'd first have to think about it. You've first got to decide whether it's something, how important is it to take up, or is it important? And if it is important, then I would address now what he'd said. I might say, Captain, what you just said, that remark you made, it's not appropriate, or I found it somewhat offensive. It's also not good as women in business to talk about our feelings too much. It makes us seem emotional. So I try and just stick to the actual behavior, what they've actually done, and comment on that behavior. And then it would give him a chance to apologize to me, in which case we could forget it and move on.
It's interesting that often when people do make remarks that are derogatory to somebody else, they don't realize the actual impact they're making on themselves.
Yes, well, it's a very bad reflection on yourself. I mean, it shows that you're an insecure person and that you're trying to put other people down to make yourself feel better. And that was something I realized, that's what had been going on with him. I realized that a long time later, but at the time I was just dumbstruck and hurt, And then on that flight we actually had 3 pilots, and then the third pilot said to me, "Oh no, I'm sure he didn't mean it." Once again, trying to smooth it over or say, "Oh, you mustn't be upset by that." In which case the woman now thinks, "Oh, I'm wrong." And this is another way in which we tend to put ourselves down by being told that we're wrong to have these feelings. You get told, "Oh, you're too sensitive." So automatically, they've done wrong, and now we are wrong for even being upset. And that is something that was one of the biggest challenges, the things that I've learned to overcome by learning then to address my feelings and to know that I'm entitled to those feelings. But then I've got to address them in the right way. I've got to deal with it privately, not bring that emotion onto the flight deck. Mm-hmm. I suppose you could call it emotional intelligence, but I have my system for doing it now. I can use my journal or some way of just expressing it to myself and finding an insight about myself as well. Why did I react, and how could I do it better next time? That's a key thing for me when I'm in a situation which I don't handle so well, because when you're doing something new, then you don't always get it right the first time. So then I'll sit quietly with myself afterwards and ask, how can I do it better next time around? And just taking charge by asking myself that question, I'll come up with an answer, but then I feel like I'm back in control. I'm back in control of my feelings and my life, because the next time it does come around, because sure as anything it will, and then I can deal with it in the best possible way.
So you use journaling and communicating with yourself in order to being honest with yourself so that you can get the emotion out of it, so that you can communicate the behavior.
Yes, but just to get the insights, because when you've got all that emotion that's taken charge of you, you can't get proper insights. If you're dealing with fear or hurt, then you can't see the truth of something, and you also can't see how anything that you could have done might have led to it. So I have to look at both of those things. Once I've got rid of my own emotion, being able to process that, then I can see, okay, what is the truth of the situation, and how can I deal with it the next time?
And this is relevant, obviously, right across any area of communications. Often people will say when you get an email, make sure that you don't respond immediately if it affects you emotionally. Write it emotionally, but then park it and don't send it. It's the same sort of philosophy, and then eventually go back to it, and then you'll realize that really, if you sent that, you would have just fueled the fire, made it worse, and cause yourself more problems in the future. So it's sort of the same sort of philosophy.
It is, and I can actually extend that philosophy is when I get back from a long-range flight and I'm very tired, or when you are under some kind of stress. Fatigue is very much a type of a stress. So I don't make big decisions, and I don't plan to do any big things, and I definitely don't send emotional emails when I've got back from a flight and I'm fatigued. So if you can detect you're under any type of stress, then don't do anything like press that send button. It's just save it in the drafts folder, or whatever you're going to say. Don't pick up that phone and make that phone call while you're in a state of stress. That's something I also learned along the way.
Thank you so much, Jane, for sharing with us today. Again, my name is Suzanne Stevens, and I co-produce Wisdom Exchange TV alongside my husband, Michael K. Ginrich. We're traveling all over Africa with backpacks, interviewing women leaders like the woman we met today. If you know a woman we should interview, please email us at info@wisdomexchangetv.com. Join us on our Facebook fan page at Wisdom Exchange TV, as we're updating that regularly, as well as our homepage of Wisdom Exchange TV, where we take people we've interviewed and syndicate their blogs, and there's new information on that every single day. So join us there as well. Thanks for joining us.